All right, so we'll give it a few minutes before we get started. And Farouk, if you could just make sure that if for any reason my mic goes out or something, let me know. I'll, I'll try to check the chat, but I'll also check Slack.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds good.
That they can hear us. All right, so welcome everyone. We will be getting started in just a few minutes. 10 viewers. Okay, very good. All right, so for those of you that are here, welcome. We're just going to do a little technical check here. If you can hear and see me okay, go ahead and type into the chat box, yes. Yes, you can hear me. Yes, you can see me okay. Very good, very good. All right, the second thing that we want to do is if you guys can let me know where you are connecting from or from where you are connecting. Just and let us know what you do for a living. So what you do for a living and where you are now. That would be helpful. We just like to give people a couple of minutes to join before we go ahead and get started. Okay. U.S., Tanzania, Jamaica, India, Egypt, UK, Cup. Okay. Yeah, it's a slightly different shape. Yeah, I'm really excited about this webinar today. I'm excited about all of them, but this one is going to be a good one. It's packed, so I'm going to be moving quickly through the information, but you will get a replay, and we'll try to also get you some kind of an outline or something where you can visualize some of the information that we talked about. But definitely, you will get the replay. And so I want to encourage you to go back through this. Everything that we talk about today is going to be actionable and practical. And much of this you will be able to implement in the moment. So if you have a meeting today, later, or tomorrow, you'll be able to actually implement this in that meeting. Now, not all of it, but you'll be able to implement any part of it that you want to. The thing that we want you to remember is that when you try something the first time, if it doesn't work the way you want, don't think, well, this doesn't work. It's just like a baby. If a baby tries to walk and talk and says, oh, this is not working, I don't think I'm going to be able to walk or talk, until it stops, then we would not be walking or talking. So you can do this. You just have to keep trying. Okay. So that's one thing that I wanted you to know. And actually, we're going to go ahead and get started right now. Let me just change the layout here a little bit. All right, Farouk, I'm going to bring you off stage and then you can come back on when we are ready. So we have Farouk here. Farouk is a certified permanent speech coach and he'll be monitoring the chat, okay, and sharing some resources with you throughout the webinar, jumping in probably around the middle just to share a few things, but he's here with us. So if you have any questions or issues, please feel free to contact him in the chat. Okay. And then we're going to have at the end, I'm going to do my best to save some time for question and answer. So let's get started. Today, what we're going to be looking at is how to master the moment. And I want to give you 4 powerful strategies. We call them strategies or tools, 4 powerful strategies or tools that you can use. And as I said earlier, that are actionable, they're practical, they're implementable in the moment. So these are not necessarily things that you have to practice for a long time, although you do if you want to get good at them. But these are some things that you have control over that you can do right now. Now, again, if you want to get good at these things, then you will need to practice them. So many of you have struggled in the following areas. These are the areas that we've discovered that we found from our clients over the past decade, actually more than 12 years. Number one, presentations. Each and every one of you probably have to give presentations in one form or another. Number two, interviews. All of you will have to do interviews virtually or offline. And number three, meetings. And actually, there's a fourth one we'll talk about too. So, number three, meetings. You're going to have meetings where you may have to do updates, where you'll have stand up meetings, or you may have to do a presentation in a meeting. So, meetings. And then the fourth one would be social situations. So, it could be a party, it could be at a bar, you could be at someone's house, or it could be a conversation. These are all situations all of you will find yourself in. All of you probably have to do some of these things now. So, presentations, interviews, meetings, and social situations. Now, we could fit these into 2 or 3 main categories, if you will. One would be professional, right? So, we say professional, we can put meetings, interviews, and presentations under that. The second would be personal. When we say personal, we're talking about what? Talking about how you think, how you feel, your self talk, your self esteem, your self confidence, anything going on inside of you, personal. And then the third would be social, right? The third would be social. So that's another category. This would be any interactions that you have with family, friends, acquaintances. Could be when you're ordering coffee, could be when you're having a conversation with someone that you don't know. Could be when you're having a conversation with your parents, with your husband or wife, with your children, with your siblings. We're going to classify that under social. Okay. So these are the 3 main categories: professional, personal, internal stuff, social. They all overlap, but we can classify what we're going to talk about there. All right. So that's a high level. And we're going to zoom back in. And I'm going to be specifically sharing with you 4 strategies, 4 tools, techniques, if you will, to help you deal specifically with challenges that you have had, that you may have in what? In meetings, presentations, and interviews, and to some degree, social situations. But I won't talk about social situations as much. Okay. So some of you have struggled how in these different situations? Well, perhaps in a meeting, you have avoided speaking up. Perhaps in a meeting, you have avoided saying what you really wanted to say. Maybe you cut your response short, right? Because you didn't want to get stuck, or you was hoping that you would articulate it clearly, but you weren't sure, and so you didn't say everything that you wanted to say. This is directly from people that we've worked with, thousands of people that we work with, and I've experienced this myself, and so has Farouk, and so have you, right? So meetings, perhaps in a meeting, you want to raise your hand, you have a comment, you have something that you want to say, some feedback, some input, you have an idea, and you think, shoot, I'm going to get stuck. I can't even get the first words out. Your heart is pumping. Right? Your heart is pumping. Your heart is racing. And you're like, that's okay. I won't say anything. Or you're in a meeting and you have to do a stand up, you have to do an update. And so, again, your heart is racing. You rush through it. You say it as quickly as possible because, again, you don't want to mess up. You don't want to get stuck on something or you don't want to say the wrong thing or say it in the wrong way. Right? Meetings, presentations, you anticipate, you start negatively anticipating or worrying about, we'll talk about some categories of worrying in a minute, but you start worrying about if I'm going to be able to say all the words I need to say. Am I going to freeze up? Is my mind going to get cloudy? Am I going to forget the information that I need? Am I going to have to read off of slides? Will I get stuck? That is, will I not be able to say what I want? Will I crash and burn? Somebody calls it train wreck. Will that happen to me during a presentation? Will what I'm saying be clear enough for my audience? Will it be clear for my audience? These are some worries that people have, and many of them could be based on negative previous experience or previous negative experiences, right? And what's the next one? Well, the next one would be interviews. So you have an interview and perhaps you don't perform as well as you would like. Maybe you're so nervous and you're so anxious because the stakes are high, right? You're so nervous and you're so anxious that you rush, you don't answer the question fully or completely, or you answer the wrong question, or you forget the answer. Like you knew the answer, but in the interview you forgot, and the people can see that you're very nervous, that you're very anxious. And so they say, well, this person doesn't have good communication skills. So you don't do well in the interview. And then we'll talk a little bit about social wear. Maybe you don't participate in as many social activities as you would like, or you don't converse or interact, or you don't tell stories or tell jokes or give examples. Right? So you don't engage as much as you would like in social situations because of your speech. Does any of this sound familiar? And I'm sure that there are more challenges that you may have had, or that you may have in any of these situations or occurrences. And this is very normal for people to have. But what I want to do today is to share with you some very practical ways that you can overcome this. And it doesn't have to take as long as you would think. So we're going to break down these strategies into two primary areas. One has to do with mindset. Mindset. This has to do with the way that you think. This has to do with you're mentally blocking, right? You're getting distracted. You're feeling discouraged. You're feeling anxious and nervous, right? So we're going to talk about mindset. And then there's going to be two areas under that. So one category is going to be mindset, and I'll give you. Then there's two areas beneath mindset that we'll talk about. These two areas will be the two strategies that we'll talk about there. And then the second category, what we're going to talk about, has to do with your speech, right? Your speaking, how you speak. And then I'm going to give you two strategies under that category, two strategies under that category. So let's take a look at this first category, your mindset. This is probably one of the most important and drives everything else. This first category is your mindset, your thinking, and so forth. So the first strategy or tool, technique, if you will, that I want to give you is how can you overcome mental blocks? These are things that prevent you from performing as well as you would like in any of those situations that we talked about. How can you kind of overcome those mental blocks. Well, let me define for you some of the things that people tend to worry about, or some of the categories of worry, if you will. Some of the categories of worry. This kind of this can encompass pretty much everything or anything someone worries about in one way or another. One has to do with the pressure to perform. The pressure to perform. Very, very common, right? Very, very common. Doesn't matter if you just you struggle under pressure and high pressure, high stakes speaking situations, or if you stammer or stutter. Doesn't matter. Many of us have struggled with this. You feel the pressure to have to perform, like I have to, I need to. So if you hear yourself thinking or saying that, that's what this is, the pressure to perform. The second one is the fear of failure. I hope I don't. I hope I don't mess up. I hope I don't look stupid. I hope I don't say something stupid. I hope I don't get stuck. I hope I don't stutter or stammer. I hope I don't block. I hope I don't lose my train of thinking while I'm speaking. Fear of failure, very normal, very common. And then finally, the fear of judgment. The fear of judgment. If if this happens, if I mess up, what will people think about me? And there are different degrees to this, right? One of the degrees is if there are people in authority there, then the pressure can be higher. If there's a certain number of people there, then the pressure can be higher. There are people that you don't know there, the pressure can be higher. So all of these things can affect your mindset, how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and how you perform in the moment. So these are the general fears that people have: the pressure to perform, fear of failure, and the fear of judgment. In the moment, when you allow yourself to get distracted by these fears, then you will find that you won't perform as well as you would like to. So, one of the first techniques that I want to share with you, and there's some principles behind this that I need for you to understand so that you can believe that it's fact, is for you to make sure that you shift your focus where it needs to be. And here we're going to talk about something that you've heard me talk about before, but before we get to it, Vic and Rick. But before we get to that, there's something that you and I have. It's called a cognitive load. So when you and I are speaking, like I'm speaking right now, we have what's called a cognitive load. That is a capacity that we have a certain amount of resources that are being used to speak, to communicate, to articulate our thoughts. A cognitive load. Now, the reason this is important is that some people think their cognitive load is so much that they don't have time, they don't have the capacity to remind themselves to relax or to slow down, or whatever. That's when they say it goes out the window. I go blank. They believe that the cognitive load is so much that they simply don't have the capacity to think about anything. Well, I can't think about modeling. I can't think about breathing because I'm thinking about what I have to say. It's cognitive load, cognitive load. But the truth is, yes, you have a cognitive load, resources that you're using, but you also have cognitive reserves. Now, what are cognitive reserves? Cognitive reserves is the are the resources, the capacity that you have left over. It's called reserves, right? So even though you have a certain amount of cognitive load, and for people who stutter or stammer or really struggle with their speech, they're using more cognitive resources than normal. You also have cognitive reserves. So there's a certain amount of capacity that you have, a certain amount of resources that you have where you can do what we call parallel thinking, parallel processing. Michael, what is parallel processing? Parallel processing is your ability, watch this, is your ability to speak, right? To speak and think about something else pretty much at the same time. So while you are speaking in between, you're also able to go out and parallel process. You're able to think about other things like monitoring the audience, looking at people's eyes, pulling in the next point, right? You're using your cognitive reserves there, and everyone has cognitive reserves. So you're not any different than anyone else. You may have less cognitive reserves, but you're not going to have zero. You may have less simply because you're allowing yourself to be distracted by other things. You can decrease. So, one of your jobs is to reduce your cognitive load by improving your speech. And one of the ways we do that is in our programming speech system through modeling and through our free flow speaking exercise. What the free flow speaking exercise does is it helps you to speak without thinking and say exactly what you want to say, or speak while you think and say exactly what you want to say. Now, I'm going to say this now and I'll say it again later, but the more prepared you are, the more present you're able to be, and the better you perform. Call that the triple P principle. And I'll revisit this in a little bit. The more prepared you are, the better you're able, the more present you can be, because you're not worried about, okay, I think I know what that is, and I need to think about this. And I know I'm not prepared. So the more prepared you are, the more present you can be in the moment. Like right now, I'm present because I'm prepared, and then the better my performance. So keep that in mind, because that will reduce your cognitive load. And when your cognitive load is reduced, you're able to perform better. You have more cognitive resources. When you have cognitive resources, you can think about things that will help you perform better, like Vic and Rick. Again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. Now, let's talk about cognitive breathing space, the pause, like I just did, the pause. When you pause, it has two benefits, and we'll revisit pausing just a little bit. But when you pause, you're able to breathe. And in the second part, we'll talk specifically about breathing. When you pause, you give your brain a chance to relax, to rest, right? Give your brain a chance to relax. When you breathe, you're able to relax yourself down. Again, we'll talk about the benefits, but cognitive breathing space is something we all have, but you may not take advantage of it. Cognitive breathing space and pausing helps you. It gives you a chance to relax. It gives you a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to remind yourself to do certain things. And it helps your audience because you're not overloading them with this constant stream of speech where they don't have a time, where they don't have a chance to process what you're saying. Okay. So this is very important to remember, because if you think I can't, when I'm in a high pressure speaking situation, when I'm speaking, I can't think of anything else. It seems like I can't remind myself to do certain things. You can, you just have to believe that you can, that you do have the reserves, that you can pause, right? You can do this. And when you do, you will allow yourself to perform better. So keep that in mind. Now let's talk about Vic and Rick. I have written this down, so I don't really write this down again. But Vic and Rick is what we call positive distracted. So here's why this is so important. When you are speaking, you want to keep yourself from being distracted by the pressure to perform. What's the next one? The fear of what? Failure and the fear of judgment. Whenever any of us, whenever any of us allow ourselves to become distracted by those things, even me, you'll see your performance diminish, decrease. So if I were to allow myself to feel like I have to do this, I have to do this now. What if I do this? And if I do that, then what are they going to think? If I allow myself to do that, what am I not doing? Or I'm not thinking about, I'm not focused on what I should be. What should I be focused on in the moment? What should I be focused on in the moment? So it's a matter of focusing. So this is kind of the first technique is to focus on Vic and Rick. And you can apply this in presentations, interviews, meetings, and social conversations. So let's talk about what this is and how to apply it. V stands for value. So when you are speaking, you want to be thinking about, is what I'm saying important? Is it useful? Is it valuable to that person? Is it valuable to me to say in this moment, right now? You want to be reminding yourself, is this valuable? Is this valuable? Right? The second part of that is the R in Rick. Is this relevant? Is this relevant to this conversation? Or should I say that later? Should I not say it at all? Some people, you're talking about one thing, they're in their own head and they talk about something else. I hate really speaking with people who can't stick with the subject at hand. Same thing. So that's in a conversation. But in a presentation, you want to make sure that the content that you're presenting is valuable to that audience and that it's relevant to that audience. It's important to them. So you want to be reminding yourself. So this is a mental tool to remind yourself throughout the presentation. Is this valuable? Is what I'm about to say valuable? Is what I'm about to say relevant? Now, hopefully, you've done this in your preparation. You've prepared, kind of practiced content that's valuable and relevant to your audience. In our Pro 90 Smooth Speech system, we have an entire module, actually more than one module, on it's called the Ultimate Presentation System to help you prepare your presentations, how to think about them, how to organize them, how to practice them, and how to present them. It's all in there. And so the first part is value and relevancy. The second one is impact. It's impact. It's, am I holding their attention when I'm speaking? Am I holding their attention in a meeting, an interview, in a conversation? Am I holding their attention in all of these areas? Presentation, interview, meeting. So let's look at some examples. When you're speaking in a presentation, you want to make sure that you're using appropriate body language, that you're modulating your voice, that you have good eye contact. It doesn't matter if you struggle with your speech, it doesn't even matter if you're severe. We've had thousands of clients who've come through our program who've gone from severe stuttering to actually standing up and speaking, and their people in authority, their friends and family have come and said, that was an awesome presentation. That was great. Oh my goodness. I can't believe literally they've come up and said that too. Oh wow, your speech has improved so much. So you want to make sure that you're engaging them, that you're holding their attention with your body language, with your pacing, with your voice, right? All of those things, we call those proactive speaking skills. Proactive speaking skills. We have several of them that you can learn. They're right there. Same thing in an interview. You're interviewing. You're going to look at an interview like a series of many presentations. You have an interview, they ask you a question, now it's your turn to respond. And when you respond, you're presenting information. So you look at it like that, right? So you want to make sure that you're saying, okay, am I answering their question? Is this relevant? Is this valuable information? Is this the information that they need? And holding their attention, impact. What about the C? C stands for clarity. There's two parts to clarity. There's style and there's structure. Right? So style, we mean, am I enunciating? Am I articulating so that they can understand what I'm saying? Doesn't matter if you have an accent, even if you're not using the appropriate words, if it's your second language, but you are clear, people can understand what you're saying, believe it or not, if you're clear. Also, your speed. If you're speaking really fast, it's more difficult for people to understand you. So it's not clear. If your voice is too low, if it's too high, if it's monotone, all of these things can affect your style and can affect your what? Level of clarity, your clarity. Structure. You want to make sure that whatever you're saying is structured logically where people can follow. So you can use question and answer. You can use category and number. You can almost always use category and number, one, two, three. So there's three things, right? There's Vic and Rick. Well, that's kind of a category and number, VIC, RIC. Right? Three things, category and number. So it kind of puts a framework around what you're saying. It helps you organize your thoughts better. It lets you know this is what I'm going to talk about next. So in an interview, someone asks you a question, you can say, well, there's two things or two experiences I had. You just come up with something. Two experiences I had, three experiences. Boom, boom, boom. You know what you're going to say. So it's very important. It's logical. What about question and answer? Well, who, what, when, where, why, how. You're not going to use all of those, but why is this important? How does this work? When do we do this? These are questions that you can structure your thoughts and your presentation around. Helps make it more clear in your own mind and in the mind of your listeners. Speed is important. If you speak too slow, it's going to be draining. If you speak too fast, it's going to be draining because people have so much information coming at them, they won't be able to catch it. That's why pausing is important, like I just did, right? So you want to pause. If you notice, I'm not speaking super slow. I'm just pausing and I'm emphasizing. I just paused and I'm emphasizing. So when you speak with a certain kind of rhythm, then you can basically not speak really slow, so you're not going to drag your speech, but you can speak what we call dynamically. And there's different ways to speak dynamically. I'm not the most dynamic speaker in the world. There are other people who speak in a different dynamic way than I do. Okay. But you can create your own speaking style. And you have to remember that clarity is a big part of that. Impact is a big part of that. Okay. So in a presentation, you want to make sure that you're Vic and Ricking it. Is this valuable? Is this relevant? Am I holding their attention? Is this clear? In an interview, am I answering their question? Am I speaking in a way that I'm holding the interviewer's attention? Is my answer clear? Right? In a meeting, if you want to give feedback and comment, is this concise? Is my comment clear? Is this relevant to this discussion right now? Am I holding people's attention? Because their attention span is going to be short, right? So you only have maybe a minute to give your comment or something like that. So you want to keep those things in mind. What about in social conversations? We'll talk about that when we get to presence. When we get to presence. So one of the ways that you can make sure that you don't allow yourself to become negatively distracted, that you don't allow anxiousness and nervousness to take over in the moment is to remember you have cognitive reserves and you have the power of the pause where you can remind yourself of Vic and Rick. And you can just have this circulate in the back of your mind. And there's basically three levels that you will kind of go through in your speech journey. Level one is where you need to consciously remind yourself in the moment of some of the mechanics. Remind yourself to breathe. Remind yourself to slow down. Remind yourself of Vic and Rick. That kind of comes in level two. But mechanics, breathe, slow down, articulate, model. Level one. Level two, you don't really have to remind yourself so much to breathe or to slow down. Level two is more Vic and Rick. It's kind of a higher level. Okay. Let me make sure that what I'm saying is valuable. Let me make sure I'm holding their attention. Let me make sure this is clear. They understand what I'm saying. It's kind of level two. Level three is where all of that happens automatic and you can just be present and you can say what you want to say, and Vic and Rick come into play automatically. Breathing and slowing down come into play automatically. Sure, there are times where you have to Vic and Rick it. There are times where you have to remind yourself to slow down. For the most part, it's automatic. That's level three. Okay, that's level three. All right. So the first thing is focus. In order for you to perform well, you need to keep your focus where it needs to be. What does it need to be on? Vic and Rick. Vic and Rick. Just remember Vic and Rick in the moment. Now let's talk about the second part to this, the second technique, if you will, second mental tool. Second one has to do with being present, being present in the moment. So you're in a meeting, you're in an interview. If you allow yourself to get distracted by pressure to perform, fear of failure, fear of judgment, you won't be in the moment. You'll start getting anxious and nervous. You'll start anticipating words that you need to say, that you have to say, that you want to say, and that all of a sudden you don't feel like you're going to be able to say them. So your mind gets distracted by that. And again, it changes your physiology. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, fight or flight. And now you start to get cloudy. You start sweating. Your breathing gets shallow. You get stiff. You start speaking fast, and you simply can't communicate the way that you want. When you're present, you can do two things. Now, watch this. When you're present, you want to empty your mind and focus on what the person is saying, what's going on around you. One of the ways you can do this is to actively engage your mind. So that is, if someone's speaking, and you'll naturally do this anyway, you can ask questions about what they're saying. Wow, I wonder how that works. I wonder when I should use that. I wonder how I can use that in my situation. So you're present, you're listening to what that person is saying, and you're asking questions. You can do this professionally and socially, right? You're present in the moment, listening to what they're saying, you're soaking it in, you're actively engaging by asking yourself questions about what they're saying, or you're making mental notes. You're saying, "Ooh, that's good. I want to remember that. Yeah, I want to make sure that I implement that or that I write this down later." So you're making mental notes about what they're saying. Okay. So you're asking questions about what they're saying so you can remember it. You're paying attention and you're making mental notes about what they're saying. And then there are other times where you're just empty and you're just listening and you're soaking it in. You're trusting that you will be able to respond and say what you need to say when it's time. Okay. Because you're prepared. If it's impromptu, you're trusting that you will be able to say what you need to say because you're feeling more confident. And if you practice our free flow speaking exercise, you'll know that you'll be able to say what you want without having to think about it. Or you can say what you want while you're thinking about it. So you want to make sure that you're being present. Now, what else can you do in order to be present? Well, sometimes you can and you may need to shift your thinking a little bit to what? You can shift your thinking to something that you want to say. Now, this is not where you want to spend a lot of your time, but this has happened to me a lot. If you're in a meeting or you're in an interview and or a conversation and you say, I want to remember to say this, or I need to say this. So an example would be a couple of weeks ago, I went to a chamber networking event. Hadn't been out in a while because just been doing stuff online. So I felt a little excited, anxious, a little nervous, right? Because just hadn't been out in a while. I go out a lot, but not in those kinds of events. So what did I do? Immediately shifted my focus to what can I say that's going to be valuable and relevant for this audience that will help them get to know me and what I do. Well, first I can ask them a question about something, and then I can make sure that I introduce and I say this or that. And then immediately I shifted my thoughts back to what everyone else was saying. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time in my own head thinking about what I wanted to say. But I did spend some time doing that. And that's okay to shift periodically to what you want to say, the idea. Don't let yourself start thinking about words. Now, what if you do think about words? Well, give yourself options. Say, well, I'll say it like this, or I'll say it like that, or I'll say it like this. But don't lock in on any one. Just say, here are the options. If I need to say it like this, I'll say it. If I need to say it like that, I'll say it like that. What you'll do is by giving yourself options in that moment, you'll relax yourself. You'll feel more relaxed, more calm, more confident. Immediately shift your attention back to the present moment. Don't spend time there. So let me reiterate. let me summarize that. You don't want to think about the words that you have to say. That's the last thing that you want to do. But sometimes they'll pop into your mind. Give yourself options. What you may want to think about from time to time, especially if it's impromptu, is I'd like to say this, I'd like to talk about this and that, and then immediately shift back to the present moment. So most of your time you want to be spending in the present moment, engaging with that person or what they're saying. But there will be instances where you can periodically make a mental note of, I want to say this, this, and this. I want to talk about this. I want to share this. Make sure I don't forget that. Okay, that's okay. But look at what you're doing there. Everything that you're doing is constructive. It's positive. Okay? It's not destructive. It's not negative. It's not draining. It's not distracting in a sense, right? So when you're in the present, you're there in that moment. You're paying attention. You're listening, which people like. You are diminishing and in many cases eliminating the reserve time that you have to worry about stuff, to worry about fear of performing, fear of what? Judgment, fear of failure. You're diminishing that down and in many cases eliminating. So in many cases, in most cases, I would say I've eliminated those fears. Simply, I don't think about them. They don't bother me because immediately I'm thinking about, I like to talk about this, this, and this, or I'm engaging with that person. Now, there are some situations where I may have never been in where I may have a fear of failure. I may have a pressure to perform. I may have a fear of judgment. I've never been in those speaking situations. So it can happen. But what would I do? Well, because I have the tools, I'll immediately shift my mindset back and I'll focus on Vic and Rick and I'll focus on being present because I have these tools that I'm giving to you today. Okay. And they work. They work. Think of the alternative. If you don't do this, what's going to happen? Well, some of the same things that's been happening to you for years. This is what works. And there are things you can do in the moment. Okay. Now, let us stop there. I'm going to just summarize a couple of things. So you have meetings, interviews, presentations. We have out here social conversations. You want to make sure that you stay focused in all of those areas, right? You stay focused in all those areas. And one way to focus yourself is to think about Vic and Rick. This can happen again in a meeting. It's what I'm saying relevant. Am I holding your attention? Is this clear? Clarity has been very, very important to me. I'm giving a presentation, I'm thinking about serving my audience, making sure it's clear, making sure I'm holding your attention, making sure it's valuable. That's all that I'm thinking about. I don't have the time or energy. Remember cognitive reserves. I don't have the time or energy to think about anything else. And the more you do it, the more of a habit it becomes. So you're making sure you stay focused. The second thing is to be present. When you're in an interview, it's important to be present so you can listen to the question being asked of you. And when you can listen and hear the question, then you're more likely to answer the question, more likely to be relevant, give valuable information. If you're all up in your own head worrying about stuff, then you're done. The same thing in a presentation. I'm giving this presentation now. I essentially have very little to no notes, right? Because it's all stuff that I've organized in my head. And I could easily get distracted if I allowed myself to think about other stuff. But I'm just in the back of my mind, I've got Vic and Rick, and I have a structure for what I want to communicate with you. And so I'm allowing that to flow. And we'll talk about some other things in terms of breathing and pausing, slowing down in the next part of this webinar. All right. So that is the first part. Let's move on. Let's talk about the the physical thing, the speech, the speaking. What can you do speech wise to help you to perform well, right? All right. So the first thing is very, very, very simple, and that is breathing. Right. One thing you want to remind yourself to do that a lot of people forget in presentations, in meetings, in interviews, conversations. They forget to breathe. So remember, if you're feeling anxious or nervous about something, that is your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, kicking in. And so you can become stiffer, you can start to sweat, your breathing becomes more shallow, you lose as much access as you need to your prefrontal cortex, your analytical brain. You don't have time to analyze, you need to act, right? You need to fight, freeze, or flight or leave, right? So your body gets geared up for that. It's not geared up for analytical thinking, for public speaking. But when you breathe, you affect your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So this relaxes your digestive system and allows you to digest your food. It starts to slow your heart rate down. So instead of pounding, which I've had happen to me before, like pounding, 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 I want to remind you something here too. Your heart is pounding, and I'm able to access the content that I have in my mind when I'm breathing. So, a couple of things to remind you of. These are very important. So, remember these. Number one, you can still perform well despite how you feel. Let me say it another way. Even if you feel anxious or nervous, you can still perform well. I've done it. I've done it a lot, right? There have been times where I'm feeling anxious or nervous, and we can reframe that and say I'm feeling excited. But even if you didn't, your heart was pounding, you can still perform well by remembering to breathe and by remembering to do the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is to slow down, right? And I'll tell you about that next. But breathing, to remind yourself to breathe. So here's an important point to remember. You can still perform well despite your feelings. So don't think and don't believe that because you feel anxious, you can't perform well, because you can. You just have to remember to breathe, breathe more frequently, breathe more fully, right? And to slow down, which is the next thing. The second thing that I want to remind you of that I mentioned earlier is when you prepare. So let's say you have a presentation, interview, meeting, the more prepared you are, the better you're going to perform. The more prepared you are, the more present you will be able to be in that moment because you won't be trying to prepare in the moment, and the better you will be able to perform. This is where in our system we talk about reservoirs of knowledge. So you should always be prepared in your areas of expertise. You should always be preparing so that you have reservoirs of knowledge that you can draw from and that you can use in any given moment. Just throw it into the structure. One, two, three. Well, there's two things, there's two reasons, there's two ways, there's three things, right? Just throw it into that. So you want to make sure you're prepared because when you're prepared, you feel calmer, you feel more relaxed, you feel more confident, right? This is true. The problem is you can be prepared, but if you think, oh my God, I'm feeling anxious and nervous, and then you start to focus on that, you allow yourself to get distracted, what happens? Well, because your sympathetic nervous system is starting to take over, you lose access to those reservoirs of knowledge, to your prefrontal cortex, to many parts of your memory, right? So you can't access information that you know. This happens in interviews, this happens in presentations, this happens in meetings. So what I'm sharing with you are ways to help keep you focused, help keep you present. Breathing is one of the most important ways. So make sure that you're breathing while you're speaking, like I'm doing. I'm making sure I constantly have air. I'm taking more breath in through my nose and speaking on the exhalation. Sometimes I'll take a deep breath, let it out, and take a slightly deeper breath, and then begin speaking. Most of the time while I'm speaking, I'll just take a slightly deeper breath and speak on the exhalation. So I always have enough air in my system to relax me, to keep my mind clear so I can access those reservoirs of knowledge. And you need air to drive your speech. Air gives you the power to drive your speech. And that brings us to our final part, and that is to slow yourself down. I was about to say something else, a little bit of a curse word, but slow yourself down. And this is something that so many people forget. I've told people this. I remember one of my first coaching clients from India, and she was going to interviews, and I said, be sure to start slow or start super slow. First time she didn't do it, crashed and burned. Second time she did it better, still didn't do that well. Third time, I think she got the job. She said that she slowed down. From the time she went in to talk to the receptionist, the time she went in the interview, she was able to slow herself down. Time seems to feels like it's going faster than what it actually is. Remember this: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. They say that generally in special forces. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. When you speak slower, you're going to be speaking smoother. You're going to be more efficient. You'll choose the right words. You'll be able to access the content that you want. You'll be more concise. You'll be more precise when you take your time. Going slow doesn't mean dragging, but you want to slow yourself down, especially in the beginning of the interview, beginning of the presentation, beginning of the meeting, beginning of your comments. Go a little slower. Make sure that you're breathing, right? When you do that, you'll speak smoother. When you speak smoother, believe it or not, you'll be more efficient. One of my clients many, many years ago, PhD student, had a presentation that was planned. Before he started with me, it took him X number of minutes. After he had worked with me, he spoke slower, but he finished the presentation faster. Why? Because he was more efficient. How do you slow your speech down? One way is to extend your words and pause. Remember, we talked about pausing? This is where pausing comes in. Pausing, what we call cognitive breathing space. It gives your brain space or time to breathe, if you will, to relax. When you pause, just that second, when you pause, I pause, right? Gave my brain time to relax. When you ask a question of your audience, gives you time to relax, give them time to respond, gives you time to relax. This cognitive breathing space is very important. It's a way to slow your speech down, right? So pausing is also a time for you to breathe. It's a time for you to remind yourself to do certain things. Okay. So pausing is very important. Extending your words. Some people call it stretching. We call it extending. For example, you don't have a stretched warranty. You have an extended warranty. So I think the word extending and extended sounds more eloquent and elegant. So we use extending. You extend your words. When you extend your words more, you emphasize your words and you pause, you have more control, but you need air to do that. You need air to relax. You need air to extend your speech, your words. It makes your speech smoother. Then once you get going, you get a rhythm, you start to feel smoother, then you can begin to speak dynamically. That is changing your pacing. So sometimes you'll say some words a little faster, then you'll pause. Or sometimes you'll say words a little faster and then you'll slow down by extending or by emphasizing. These are all skills that you learn in our speech system. All skills that anyone that you've ever known who speaks well, these are skills that they use. The best way to learn these skills and practice these skills, right? There's two ways. Number one, our virtual smooth speech masters. Think of it like a Toastmasters online, but built upon the more than 12-year foundation of the Pro-90 speech system. So you get to learn, you also get access to the course itself, which is almost $400 itself. You get it for $120 for 6 months. Not every month, 6 months. $120, that's it. You can attend every week if you want. And you get the course. So it's one way for you to put into practice all these things you're learning under pressure. The second way, which is the more accelerated way, is for professionals who have upcoming interviews, important presentations, and meetings, is to work with us privately. We found that you can accelerate your progress by at least 10 times. So when people are working on their own, they get distracted, they get frustrated, they get discouraged, they pick and choose what they want to do, right? They get off track. When you're working with us, we help you stay on track, and our feedback is invaluable. We can see things that you don't because we've been doing it, right, for a while. And we can say, that's good, but you need to do more. Or, well, let's not focus on this now. Let's just focus on this, the 80-20 rule. Let's focus on these one or two things, which is going to get you most of your results. Then we'll focus on the other things. It's very, very difficult for you to do that on your own, which is why working with us privately accelerates your progress. So you can excel with us, you can progress with us in a couple of months uh, to a level that it might take you a couple of years. I've seen it where it take you a couple of years to get to that same place. So then what's important here is to understand that if you're a professional and you have important presentations, that's going to affect your image, how people see you. If you have interviews, it's going to directly generate income for you. If you have meetings where people are watching you, right? People are watching. If these things are situations that you find yourself in, don't keep putting yourself out there and failing and struggling and giving people the impression that you're not as intelligent as you actually are, that you're not as capable as you actually are, right? You can fix this and you can fix it pretty quickly, like relatively quickly. So if you've been struggling with this for decades and you can fix it in 3 or 4 months or 6 months or even a year, why wouldn't you do it? Like, why wouldn't you do it? There's enough evidence. We have enough reviews and testimonials going back more than a decade where you can see this works. And the reason I'm giving you this information today, so that you can put it into practice and goes, you know what? That Michael Williams guy knows what he's talking about. This does work. But remember the baby. When a baby wants to learn how to walk and talk, it doesn't just try it once or twice and say, oh, this doesn't work. I'm not going to be able to walk and talk. I'll just crawl and mumble. The baby says, I'm going to keep trying this and I'm going to make it work. I'm going to learn to walk and talk. You got to do the same thing. Anything that you're learning, you got to put some time and you have to try it. What I'm saying, it absolutely will work. You need to put it into practice. You need to try it. You need to repeat it. And you can do your own research. You can study and you'll come up with the same stuff. It works. So I wanted to share all those things with you. So just remember 4 techniques, 4 mental tools, and then we'll answer some questions. Farouk probably has some comments and some examples, and then we'll wrap up with questions and answers. Then we'll go from there. We're going to share some links with you. So 4 things. Number 1, focus. Focus on Vic and Rick. Don't allow yourself to get distracted. Be present. Be present. We talked about how you can be present. You can go back, watch the video for that. In terms of your speech, breathe. So important, so basic. So many people forget to do it. But you have the capacity through your cognitive reserves, parallel processing, pausing to remind yourself to do it. You just have to know that you can do it. You have to know and believe that you can. Remember to breathe. Second thing, slow your speech down. You may think you're going slow, but the truth is you're probably actually going at a normal speed. So keep that in mind. All right, guys. Farouk, comments, examples, any brief comments, examples, questions that people have that you haven't already answered. I'm also going to see if I can put up a link here. Guys, if you have stuff that's coming up, interviews, presentations, meetings, don't wait. Don't keep putting out that negative impression of you. You want to be competitive. We can help you get there. We have payment plans now. We have a 4 session coaching package, orientation in 3 sessions for those of you that want to try it out, or for those of you that just want to start with that. You can do that and we can get you far along the journey. So we're trying to make it more accessible. We realize the economy is tough, so we can work it out so that you can work with us and accelerate your progress. Many of our clients recently have earned their money back. In fact, I'll give you this one before Farouk pops in. One guy I'm working with just told me, this has already paid for itself. I am now the number one salesperson. I've already earned way more than what I paid you for coaching. Right. So you can earn it back in your first job. You can earn it back in your first sale. You can earn it back for a lifetime because of the fact that it's an investment. So keep that in mind. Farouk, are you there? Let's see where. All right. Farouk. Bring on stage. Yes, sir. Okay.
All right. Hello to all of you. And I have to add, Michael, that this was some great content shared by you. And I myself had to learn a lot out of it. Although I'm working as a speech coach, but I always have stuff that I keep learning from Michael, especially his sessions, his webinars, and all of that. So this was some really, really great content. I don't have much to add since you have already said some great stuff. Probably I can add an example or two, especially about that weekend rig part that you spoke about, that I've also shared in some of our meetings as well. Around a month back, I was called to speak at a foundation, and that is where I had to go out and speak to people on speaking skills and communication skills. Now, those were not the people who get stuck, who have a hard time speaking or something like that, but I just had to get out there to help them enhance their speaking skills. So when I was going to speak on the stage, for a second or two, I had a thought that, all right, they are seeing me as a speech coach. I'm going to speak there as a speech coach. So I had the thought that what if I mess up, right? What if I had a hard time? So it is all of a focus game. My focus, just a bit of it, was shifting towards that. Since mostly I work with people online, I do online meetings, sessions. After a long time, going out to speak physically on stage. But right at that moment, when I was feeling that, or when my mind was focusing on that, I immediately shifted my focus towards what I want to give to them. I'm here to speak what I want the audience to leave with after this session, so that when they leave the session, they have something with them. They learn something from this session. And just changing the focus towards that from myself, see it like a spotlight. The focus is on you, and you are shifting the spotlight to the audience. What you want to give to them, how you can impact their lives. I'm here to help them with their speech and speaking skills. So let me make sure that I help them with that. And the moment I did that, that did it for me, because after that I wasn't focused on myself, and it was a great session. They all left feedback, they all had something to learn from it. So focus has a huge role to play. And just like, if you're focusing on the Vic and Rick part, if you're focusing on using your new speaking style, like Michael mentioned, you're focusing on breathing and slowing down. You are not giving your brain a chance to focus on, I hope I don't do this, I hope I don't get stuck. I hope I don't mess up, because you're having it focused on towards what you want. You're having it focused on towards what you want to do. I want to use my new speaking style. I want to breathe and slow down. I want to focus on what I want to give to them, how I can add value, how I can speak in a more impactful way. How can my speech be clear? If you're focusing on one, two, or all of them, you just can't be focusing on the rest of the stuff. And once that focus goes out, all the rest of the stuff takes care of itself. So, one thing that if you have to take from the session is focus. Learn to focus on what you want. Learn to focus on what you want to give to them. and how to use your speaking style in the best way that you can for that. Now, Michael has been doing it for a long time. I have been working with clients for the last 2 years, and it's all about focus. It's shifting your focus from, I hope I don't get stuck, I hope I don't have a hard time, I have to say this word, I have to say that word, towards using your new speaking style. And even if you start to anticipate words, you know that you have a lot of options. You can extend, you can blend, you can emphasize, you can inflect, you can do whatever you want, say it in whatever way you like, and then move forward with your speech. One thing that I would like to say just towards the end, sometimes, and we have mentioned it in few other sessions as well, just knowing that you have a lot of options makes you so much at ease that you might not even have to use those options. So that has happened with me a lot, and that is happening with, yeah.
We we lost you for a second, but I think we got everything that you said.
Okay.
One thing that you said answers a question, so I just want to emphasize that. Uh, Desmond, what about words that have a hard time starting up? So, number one, as you do the practices, you're able to start speaking easier because you stop thinking about getting started. It just becomes more natural. So, if you try to technique your way into it, it will work sometimes. It'll work sporadically, intermittently. If you just try to use techniques to get started, sometimes it works, sometimes it won't. So you have to change your mindset, your identity, which is a process, but also you have to change the way that you speak. Once you start speaking smoother via modeling, free flow speaking, extending, blending, then you find that you stop thinking about getting started. You stop thinking about words. So you're able to just get started. So it's nothing that we can tell you necessarily, okay, this will work every time you need to get started on these difficult words. Yes, we do have tools to help you, but they may not always work because sometimes it's something that's more holistic that has to happen. And it can happen, right? That we have a process. It's not something you need to figure out. Like we already figured it out. You just have to do it. So then the second thing that Farouk said is options. Once you know you have options, so you can tell yourself, like I did, okay, I can say it this way, or this way. I'm not going to try to fix which way I'm going to say it, but I have options. I feel more relaxed. I stop thinking about it. Then when I go to say it, if this way doesn't work, I immediately switch over to this way. Just like Farouk said, you feel so much more relaxed, calmer, and more confident when you have options. When you don't have options, you feel like you're back into a corner. You literally start to worry about it. You start becoming more anxious, and that's when you get stuck. Okay. So even now, if I were to get stuck, I would still feel relaxed and calm because I know I have options. I have tools that I can use if and when I need to. Right. So that's an answer to that question. Someone asked about uh, the semi-annual course. So that's the virtual Speech Masters Club, and you can enroll for a year, or you can enroll for 6 months. And did we put a link up there for that, Farouk? Do you have? Yeah, okay. I meant to do that. Um, I can grab that real quick. Just going to take you to, let's put two links in there, Farouk. One of them, I'm just putting this to the home page. The other one, can you can you put it to the join, like the one that has the pricing on it? So if you go to the home page, there's one. Yeah. So what's included? We have a bundle of courses in there. We have the whole complete speech system that's in there for $120 for 6 months. We also have our Wave Goodbye to Worry course in there and various other modules and resources in there in that kind of membership area for the virtual speech masters. Plus, you get to join us once a week. This coming weekend, we'll be meeting on Saturday. We were meeting on Sundays. Now we're going to start and we're going to try Saturdays and see how that runs. And we've got a great group of people. We're seeing improvements from week to week, the people that attend. So you definitely want to attend that. So you get to attend, you get to practice plan presentations, you get to practice impromptu presentations on the spot. We give you a topic, or you have a topic yourself. If for 2 minutes, plan presentations are 5 minutes. You get evaluation from us. We have different roles. So it's very much like Toastmasters, except we feel like it's a little better. And the reason we say that is because it's based on our proactive speaking skills, very, very specific skills that we've been using for more than a decade. It's based on our ultimate presentation system that we've been using for a decade. I have over 52,000 Udemy students. They've been using these techniques for close to a decade, not more, but at least a decade. So this is stuff that's been out there. It's been proven it works. You get all of that in the virtual speech masters. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. A lot of content here today. I put a lot of stuff from previous webinars, from previous training sessions. We do a training session in every week in our virtual speech masters. We do a training session. Sometimes it's 15, 20 minutes, right? So you get that. A lot of what I talked about today, it was included in that. Right? So I drew from a lot of that. I drew from a lot of questions and challenges that my coaching clients have had over the years and research on that. That's all in what I talked about today. So take this webinar and watch it, but also look for subsequent videos that come out where we're going to pull apart pieces of this webinar and you can really do a deep dive, right? And implement. This is all good information, but it's no good if you don't implement it. So implement it. We have here a link for you. Guys, don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until it's a week before your interview to enroll with us. You can enroll with us, right? And we'll help you for that interview as best as we can, or for the next interview. You've got an interview coming up, or you're planning to interview. Invest your money in this, invest your time in this, because it's going to give you a huge return on investment. Like you literally get your money back. So it's not just, oh, I feel better, I feel more confident, I speak smoother. No, you're going to actually get your money back in spades, right? In multiple. So you get your money back in uh, higher positions, in more sales and new jobs, but you also feel more confident. You feel more relaxed. You have better social relationships. You feel your esteem is higher. Okay, so you get, and you're be, you're able to be more influential in your job. People listen to you. We had someone tell us, "I was working on my speech. I had to defend why I needed these additional resources for this project. And before I wasn't able to do that. This time I was, and I was able to get those additional resources. So there are many, many benefits to working with us privately, as well as joining the speech club. Right. So I'm going to wrap up with that. Farouk, any final comments before we close out?
Not much to add, Michael. I think we have covered most of the stuff.
Good, good. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Check your email over the next day or so, and you should be getting a replay as soon as it's available, and so forth. Okay. So thank you very much for attending. Those of you that weren't able to attend, but you're watching the replay, thank you very much for watching, and do stay connected with us. Do join our speech club. Do engage us so we can help you accelerate your progress. This is the time to do it. It's the time to help you become more competitive as companies lay off people, tens of thousands of people. Who are the people who are going to get the jobs? The people, not the people who are more qualified, the people who can communicate their qualifications, right? All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time.
See everybody. Bye.